Fire Technology Partners, and this is the first of three webinars we're going to be holding on the topic of industrial networks and securing the your industrial network. So the first topic today, we're really going to focus on asset discovery, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. But before we jump into things, I just wanted to introduce myself as well as the panel today. This is going to be a little different type of a webinar. We're not going to kill you with PowerPoints today. We have a couple, but we really want to turn this into a conversation. So I'm joined by some folks from Cisco Systems who work in the utility and in industrial network space on a day-to-day basis. And my colleague here and cohort in crime, Paul Gasparo.
You know, this is the first time I've been a cohort in a long time. And if you want us to barrage you with PowerPoints, just put that in the chat window, and we can do that.
We're very comfortable at that.
Yeah, the C in Cisco stands for content, as most of the folks out there know. So I really shouldn't be first billed here. I'm Paul. I'm with Cisco, and I work with some of the other folks here to help with our partners in exploring and selling IoT, ruggedized hardware. Can software be ruggedized? Yes, it can be hardened. Solutions for utilities and for manufacturing, and it's darn good to be out of the house here and down in New Jersey at Aspire's IoT Center of Excellence Lab. Yep. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'm Carter Yepsen, the IoT Director of Business Development. And we are here in our demonstration center down in Eatontown, New Jersey, and you can see some of the examples of the technology that we deploy and engineer for our customers behind me. And yes, that is the front end of 1988 Monte Carlo. That could have been a good trivia question.
It is
if we had fabulous.
So you know what? By the way, there'll be 3 trivia questions. So please pay attention. You have to be here at the end to answer the question, and you're going to get a very exciting Cisco IoT gift.
All right. Hey, thanks. And I'm joined by 3 panelists today, and I'll ask them to introduce themselves. And first is John Morris, and John is a friend as well as a business partner of Aspire's, and who we work with in the industrial space. So, John?
Thank you, Carter. Hope you can hear me. As Carter said, my name is John Morris. I spent the past 25 years in the utility sector, starting off in hydroelectric generation, working for a very large electrical utility in the Northeast, working as transmission systems operator, distribution systems control center, advanced distribution management systems. My background is in SCADA and operations from the operator's perspective, and also from the frontline business side. My team we put together at Syscon-IoT. We're here to layer on top of the Cisco technology that you're all well aware of, and provide the complete holistic solution to the utility, transportation, smart city space. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Carter.
It was on mute.
Oh, and hey,
I didn't even touch it. So.
Thank you, John, and Mike.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Kopczynski. I'm the utility industry specialist on Cisco's IoT team. So, got a long background in utilities. Been with Cisco for about 9 years. Looking at how we can help solve some of the utility challenges across the Americas, and how Cisco has some unique capabilities and technology that really fits well with the problems the industry is trying to solve. And I think that's the key in all of this is we're not building technology in search of a problem, but taking our core competency, what we know very well, and applying that to the industry challenges.
Great, thank you, Mike. And Rocky.
Hey, good morning. Rocky Smith. I'm with Cisco, been with Cisco about 15 years, and I'm a business solutions architect with our industry solutions group, and my focus for the past couple of years has been on applying our technologies to the water industry in all the ways that applies. So really looking forward to the conversation today.
Great, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and Rocky and I have worked together for many years in that smart city space, and so it's, yeah, thank you again, Rocky, for helping us out today. Yeah, so the agenda is really a pretty simple one. We're going to talk just a couple minutes about the industry landscape and the imperatives that are driving changes in the industrial network. We'll talk about some steps to success. We'll maybe have a little dialogue around those, and then just dive into an open discussion, sort of a formatted discussion about the challenges in the industry, and when we're going to dovetail or focus a little bit in on that asset discovery and communication mapping, which is the main topic of today's webinar.
So far, so good. I like it.
Yeah.
Everybody good out there? Excited? Seeing a lot of Christopher. Are you seeing a lot of thumbs up out there? Any chats that we should know of? Any questions?
Not yet.
Okay. It's just sort of set the context. This is sort of a very high-level slide about the changes that are affecting all of us. Whether you're in the utility space or in manufacturing or even smart cities and dealing with municipal utilities. The buzzword out there is Industry 4.0, and that is driving a lot of change. Part of it is the Internet of Things. Maybe we don't have to worry so much on our day-to-day jobs about robots and the like, but all these things are happening today, and part of it is it's pulling in all of the traditional IT side of network and systems demands, high availability, security, scalability, standards, low latency, etc. So these are all things that are affecting the industry and certainly utilities. I mentioned the Internet of Things and how the two worlds are converging, how the operational side of the house is being affected by the IT side of the house and vice versa, and how the two worlds are having to work together more and more. It's no longer the case where that operational technology was a siloed end-to-end solution from one of the big manufacturers out there. Now these systems all have to work together. These are probably some of the companies that I'm sure you recognize the names, and some of the big players in the utility space. And then on top of that, you've got these emerging standards and protocols of 5G. You hear about it every day. Here in the utility space, you have to be super aware of Wi-SUN and Wi-SUN 2, and then some of the new entrants, LoRaWAN as an example, long-range
wireless. Yes, I like that.
That is again some of these disruptive technologies out there that are really changing the whole landscape of how applications and solutions can be deployed at way different cost points and at far greater speeds. So if you're in that utility space or a municipal utility space, you're faced with just an onslaught of change. So visibility is one of the key areas as you're embracing this change. And so we're going to talk about asset discovery and communications mapping as an underlying tenet of visibility on your industrial networks. Now, there are several solutions out there that do this. Cisco has a product called CyberVision that we will refer to as a innovative technology in this space.
Can I ask you a question though? Well, so one of the things that I'm learning, being new to the industry from an Internet of Things and also utilities and manufacturing, is that if you look at the quick snapshot here, it's important to see what's going on. Everyone knows that. But the other thing that a company like Aspire brings to the table is that it's not all about Cisco, although as a Ciscoian, we'd like to think it's all about Cisco, but you really need a solution provider that has all of the parts and pieces, whether they're third-party hardware, third-party software, to round out the solution. You can't leave something out. So what I like about their offering here is that they do have, in this lab even, multiple different types of technology that all do plug into that Cisco infrastructure network, that ruggedized network. But really, I think the key here is that you guys have a overall solution, not just point product.
Yeah, and that ecosystem is really key here, right? And the ecosystem, and Cisco's always been really good at driving that the standards and pushing the envelope, but it's really about the ecosystem of different providers, like whether it's a lighting control company or a video surveillance company, or we got a whole bunch of technologies back there, license plate recognition and
front end of the car,
LiDAR.
Yep.
But it all definitely has to work together. So without going through the eye chart here, but these are the challenges that the industrial network is looking at today. Some of these we can certainly touch on, and this is a great, the first one is a great example. And I might even ask John to comment about this, because he worked on the front lines for many years with a utility and having to deal with those legacy investments, right, that are 10 or 20-year investments. And while the new stuff, that's super connected is coming on, how do you balance that, and what's that like in the real world?
So that's a great question. Thanks. I appreciate that, Carter. So the reality is you have a very structured, regulated group in the utility sector. The only thing that moves slower than a utility is geology, right? They have a very rigid structure. They've moved the electron the same way since Edison did it. They invented it, they think, right? So changing the way they do something is not easy, but there are a ton of disruptors out there in the market today. And getting to an edge platform is going to be critical to their survival, even in with all of these disruptors. And leveraging the networks that Cisco puts together, as well as their edge computing capabilities, and layering on with, shameless plug partners such as myself, to be able to provide those solutions in the changing world. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it later, but you have so many drivers out there. FERC 2222 is a big topic right now, which is going to allow all of these small solar panels to be aggregated and batteries to be aggregated and bid into the transmission sector. And that's outside of the purview of the utility. And that puts them into a very uncomfortable place. But it's going to take a network to drive all of this.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, and Rocky, if it's all right, I'm going to switch gears to you and just drop down one bullet to security, and maybe use the example of what happened in Tampa at the water utility just a short while ago, and how security across everything has got to be top of mind for a municipal utility.
Yeah, it's so critically important, and one of the big, I would say, especially if we think about, the smaller utilities, and especially if we even put brackets around that, and maybe even say water, one of the big concerns has been the regulation there around security has not been as tight. The standards have not been as as adopted maybe as they have been, and maybe higher regulated areas like electrical. But one thing that we're seeing now, and this is an important theme with security, is people understanding the criticality of security, also understand, or at least are beginning to understand, based on some of the trends that you've already talked about, that there's no longer one perimeter to protect. There's the perimeter is the network. It's everywhere. Anything that connects to the network can be part of that perimeter. And so tools like CyberVision with asset discovery and baselining and all those things that it brings to the table help inform that security. But without question, we are seeing hackers around the world have woken up to the fact that okay, now there are not only targets here in these industries, like we saw in Oldsmar, Florida, that you just mentioned, where it may be very low-hanging fruit to be able to get into these, and sometimes it's not a sophisticated hack to get in. Sometimes the more sophisticated concern is lack of understanding of industrial control systems, and so but they're starting to put those two together, and that can be dangerous.
I have ask a question. So my question is to the panel here is, and we hear about what happened or the potential of what could have happened in Tampa, and you hear other challenges around security. Well, thank you everybody. You've scared the heck out of me. I'm a person out here and I know that security is an issue. So between the Cisco guys on the phone and John and even Carter, what's my blueprint for success? What are the top 3 things I do next in order to say, now I know I got a problem, what do I do?
Yeah. I'll start at maybe some of the initial ones is, if we think about how these utilities have grown up over time, they don't do things such as a refresh on the operations side. So they may have stuff out there that they've been, evolving the standards over the last 20, 30 years. And a lot of that equipment is still out there. So what does that mean? And how does that get to Paul's question? Well, the first thing is, if you don't know what's out there, how can you secure it? So it really is about that asset visibility and just baselining what's out there today and what do I have to protect. They know that in each substation, each water plant, things are working, but they don't necessarily know what controllers are out there, what firmware is in all that. So, it is really extremely valuable to the customers I'm talking to for them just to have that asset inventory list, know what's out there. And from there, we can get into some more of the architectural security and the other things that we're used to doing on the IT side. I'll say that it really is about that initial step of just learning what's out there. You can't protect what you can't see.
And I'll add this just as a frame of reference. So I live up in the Boston area, and 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago, there was an article in the paper that part of the subway system was brought down because a 46-year-old switch failed. So they interviewed the guy that runs it, and they said, well, what's the plan? He said, we always make sure that the equipment we have works as it should. And they said, as it should 46 years ago. So I think that when it comes to outside of carpeted areas, you see this continuing challenge. So the quicker that you can get out there with a solution or a partner that can see those things and identify it, the better off you're going to be.
No, great example. Great example.
Could I add on to Mike just a slight bit, Carter? I mean, I want to echo what Mike said. The connected network is more secure than an isolated network. You cannot have devices operating autonomously without somebody having an eye on it. That's how hackers get in. That's how people get to this equipment. It's like having a house without a security system. Bottom line, right? You don't know if somebody's broken into your house until you get back there and everything's gone.
Yeah. Great example. I remember speaking with a regional utility a short while ago, and we were doing a CyberVision asset discovery pilot with them, and their subsystems are, typically run or managed by a small department, and there's typically 3 people that have access to that system, and they have the login ID and the password. It's probably written on. But that's how we secure it. Nobody else knows about those systems except for those 3 people with the logins and passwords.
And it was probably the factory default username and password, by the way. But
right, exactly. Hey, so we have a question from the audience. Chris, do you want to relay that to us?
Sure. Mark asks, how do you convince the customer to move away from the legacy network to new network, keeping the small service windows we often see in the industry in mind?
It's a great question.
That is a great question, because this world, OT, is not like the IT world. You can't have an outage window, right? You bear with me. You're not going to get your water or your power for a few hours while we do this refresh.
It's a problem. Any thoughts about how you guys overcome that out in the field, Rocky, Mike, or John?
Yeah, I'll jump in and then probably let the other guys hopefully round this out. So that's really truly a great question, because it goes to the heart of a lot of the hesitance around very often around presenting a vision that goes beyond step 1. So it's interesting. It's actually a really good connector to to the step one that Mike was outlining just a minute ago around, sort of determining what they have, and that's why I think it helps to phrase it or frame it as a journey. So we do take a look at the end state and the end goals, and we do paint that picture, but we understand that along the way we're going to have to adjust. There are going to be intermediate steps, and the process is going to have to take into account, the fact that there's a, that it's going to take time, and it's going to take changes, and sometimes it's going to take processes, people, or even devices, rolling out of their current space, to maybe open the way for some of the changes. And but really, those things shouldn't be, if framed properly, they don't have to be barriers. If we paint the right long-term picture, and if we think about it more in terms of a journey or a journey map to get there, as opposed to sort of saying, hey, step one is zero trust architecture. Maybe we start with asset discovery.
And what about John? I mean, from your perspective, that's the great question is, when do we do this? How do we make time for it? How do we balance? Is that more of a team effort from the vendors, or is there usually a lead integrator that helps orchestrating that?
In the utility sector, starting with the electrical utilities, usually some type of financial driver. Everything that they do has to get recovery. They have to find a way to pay for it, right? And typically there's going to be some type of impetus or push to make them want to make that change. Typically it's going to be scalability, that's reliability indices, something that's going to drive their bottom line or the pocketbook of the shareholder, right? So you're going to need to develop a project around being able to build a new foundation for them. You basically want to build vertically. You're running out of horizontal space anymore, right? So you got to build that new foundation for auto discovery, for securing their networks, for being able to scale, being able to grow without having to throw everything out the window and build a new network. So that's basically the driver. Has to be financially turned. Right now you've got the Biden administration with billions of dollars coming out with renewable energies. This could be a prime opportunity to get in front of those networks.
So you guys are suggesting that, if you can build that picture of the ROI or the benefits and have the top level of the organization see that, they will work with the folks in the field to make sure that they have the time, the downtime, and the resources to deploy the appropriate solutions. That's what you're suggesting?
It's not only work vertically top down, that's where the dollars come from, but if it's architected right and built properly, the small pain of a small outage, right, to cut over is already mitigated through testing, user acceptance testing. It's ready to go, and then they can just build on this new network. So
even the technology makes it possible to have shorter windows of time to deploy as opposed to the old days. So I'd like to ask the caller, I feel like we're on a talk show. Was that answer? Was that a good answer? Can we, any follow-ups, Christopher? Just let us know if there's a follow-up question. But I understood that. That was really good.
Yeah, no, that was great. That was great.
But go to the next one. I like one thing I'm seeing here at least there are vendors everywhere. I mean, again, it's all about Cisco, but there's a lot of third-party and other applications. So when you talk about a complex vendor mix, what is a big driver? Putting it and managing it, not siloed, but where?
Yeah, and I'll phrase it for a question for the panelists about, given what's happening in the industry, and the traditional vendors and suppliers are having to innovate, right? I mean, they're having to make their systems more connected, interconnected. What are some of the big, big game changers or the aha moments that some of these folks are having to face, whether it's electric vehicles or AMI or what have you? And is there an example out there of how one of these big providers is changing dramatically?
That's the panel.
Well,
I think they're stumped.
Another example.
I think they're stumped. Hey, I have a question.
I can take a stab at that, Carter. One of the things that we've seen with some of the core vendors in the space is they've had to do or build communication systems, communications networks, because it was required for their solution. And that worked to a point, but now these things are getting so big and so complex. At the same time, our industry is demanding networks that do more than one thing. So they're looking at it going, how do we change this model instead of us being outside our core competency and doing this communications part that, we only did as a means to the end? How can we partner with people like Cisco that really know the networking part, take that off the table, and then they can focus on the part of the solution they really know. But they can only do that if they trust that the communications is there and it's reliable and it meets all their requirements. So that is one of the things that's kind of changing, is instead of having all these siloed networks being put up, take a substation, for example. There may have been 3, 5 different siloed networks. Now it's possible to collapse those. We still do segmentation, so each network still has its own protection and all its quality of service and everything it needs. But now it's easier to manage. So that saves the utilities money in terms of operating the network. It makes it more reliable because they can build something that's much more robust. And it also makes it easier to install all these new applications because they don't have to think about the communications network anymore. They know it's there and they can just plug into it.
Yeah, a great example. Can you just talk a couple more sentences about what segmentation is for some folks that might not come from a networking background?
Sure. So there's all these different applications, and they're kind of in different buckets, and you don't want their traffic to mix. So there could be, in a substation, maybe you want to have some phones out there and APs so that when the crews are out there, they have all the same connectivity as they do in an office. This makes them more efficient because they don't have to drive back into a depot to get their work orders or drawings, whatever that is. You want that isolated or segmented into one zone. Then you may have some, security cameras out there. You'll put those into another zone. Your protection devices, those are in like the core, like we're going to protect that above all things because that's, the most important to them. So you segment that off so that none of these applications or different things you're running across the network can interfere with each other.
Great example. Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's always.
Yeah.
It also
from Cisco, it's in danger. We're always in danger of using acronyms and terms that we understand, but don't around the dinner table don't go over real well.
I think this ties back to the previous question too on how to sell this network when you have this, because now you have opportunities that the utilities didn't have before. Everything has always been centralized and you have silos. You have the IDT department over here, you have the relay department over here, and they don't talk to one another and they don't do anything back and forth. But now you have an opportunity to leverage edge devices that they never had before. They've always had edge devices in a way, autonomous relay packages and other things happening, but they never really had a good communication path to update, to monitor. And with this segmentation, you have the ability to keep those secure and give them a level of comfort that they never had before.
Can I ask you a question about edge devices?
Yeah.
I mean, we got time. So my question is that when you look at the utility space, when we go to a summer vacation place that we go to, one of the things I've noticed over the past couple of years is in the old days, if the power went out, which it does a lot of times, you could call the local utility and it was like not much, it'll be, your system will come back up in the next 8 to 10 days. But it seems to me that maybe those green boxes now, there's a new one on the end of our block. Now we're getting a little more granularity. It's like, here's what the issue is. We're seeing it. We have a smaller window of time that it's going to come back online. So my question is that an indication of digitizing in edge computing from that green box all the way to my utility, so that when I go on the app now on my phone, I'm seeing more data from those green boxes? Is that what's going on out there? Potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and a lot of it has real world ramifications. Think of the utilities out in California with when the transformer overheats. Now the transformers that are on the pole are connected, so ideally something's going on before the thing starts arcing. Yeah, absolutely.
With all
That
those
is what we
devices,
call
John,
state estimation.
So, John,
Right.
with all those devices out there, different vendors, what kind of data analytics are available to massage and make sure you're doing the best with what you have?
That's a great question. So they're in the market sector, and that's exactly what we do with SCADA, right? Supervisory control and data analytics, we like to call them, instead of data acquisition. We the vendor, whoever it is, it's a communication protocol, right? We need to talk to that device, and it has to go over a secure network. So this green box could be manufactured by S&C Electric. It could be manufactured by ABB. It's absolutely irrelevant. We need the data points out of that. We need to pull that on a consistent, secure basis to be able to build a picture of the model. And once I have that picture of the model over this network, then I can make analytical decisions. Am I overheating? Am I overloading? Can I move capacity from one location to another location? You have this outage. Do I have capacity on the adjacent circuit to restore your house? Before, I was blind. I didn't have that network. I had to make guesses, basically, or wait for field eyes to get out there. Now with the secure networks, all of those that you mentioned earlier are being deployed across field area networks, allow for the secure communication of these sophisticated devices to basically auto heal if they want to, or if they have appropriate information coming back. So you have to have near real-time data to be able to do the analytics, to be able to make those rational decisions. Machine learning, AI, big data.
Are one of the challenges too, and I'm just thinking here, is that at least in my state, utilities are heavily regulated, and
Sure.
I'm new to utilities, so is part of it that states and localities are saying, hey, company, that thing's got to be back online. We were not waiting for another 12 or 24 days for you. So they're getting pushed by regulation as well to update those systems and provide better consumer or company options or solutions. Is that part of one of the challenges out there? Regulation?
Absolutely. And I'm sure as Mike and Rocky know, and I'll hand it off to them here. I don't want to bogart all the time, but it's driven by rate cases, right? You have a municipal water system that wants to get paid to provide you with water. You have a utility that wants to make money, and they're only allowed to make money if they get their rate case passed. So you have regulators, you have customers, you have shareholders, and they're all stakeholders in that utility. And they all have to see a benefit for what you're doing. So you have to decrease outage times, you have to decrease the cost of getting those outage times down, and you have to improve the reliability of your system. And they have metrics they have to meet or they get fined.
Yeah, the ball probably big. That is, it's the regulators or the people making the decisions on what they'll get recovery from and make money off of. One of their large drivers is customer satisfaction. And how are we satisfied as customers? We want more reliability, so we want the power on. We want, when the power does go off, for it to come back on as quick as possible. And also, it is nicer to know when it's going to come back on. When the power goes off and I get the text message and says, we're aware of it, and we're going to have you on in 3 hours. Now I can make a decision with what I want to do. Am I happy about it? Not necessarily. But if I know it's 3 hours, I may do something different than if I think it's going to be 8 hours. So it's all about kind of, that whole chain that John spoke of, the customer service, what people think of their services, and the regulators trying to push these utilities, whether water or electric, to deliver on those things that make the customers happy.
Yeah, because Rocky, I assume that when the power goes out in our house for a couple hours, that the electric company doesn't give me a credit. If the water somehow is off for a day or two, I don't get a credit for that. So the only way that we drive that is through regulation and through regulating.
No, I mean,
that's part of it.
And we all just assume the water is always going to be on, right? And we can accept an electrical outage, but yeah.
Well, that gives a good question. So Rocky, here's another question, if I may ask. So in my town, once in a while, maybe I live in a smaller town, they flush the water system. Is everybody familiar with this flushing that goes on? most of the time you only know about it because they put like a little sign up on the main roads, they were flushing tonight. But that's something that should and could be digitized. You get a text from the town that says, you know, it is getting flushed. And so some of those things are still evolving. So if there are customers out there, there are other pieces of their infrastructure that aren't online yet and not hitting those metrics of customer satisfaction. And
yeah, which brings up
Let me
really,
just
really good. Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to cut on
we're
that.
all aware of a few types of disruptive technologies out there that are certainly influencing industrial networks. You know, a couple examples are edge computing, where some of the logic of the system is put on a device that is, you know, somewhere in the distributed network, and really changing the way these systems work and interoperate. Machine-to-machine learning is a buzzword, or M2M we might have heard. Yeah, another might be blockchain, and how blockchain, where we think of traditionally in the financial markets, now is, you know, potentially impacting operational technologies. So how's the industry dealing with a couple of those major changes in technology, such as those two examples?
Yeah, I think just so that and John made a really good point earlier that I really connect to this one, and that is you know, that there has to be some often impetus for it, whether it's regulatory or financial or something that's going to drive some of those adoptions. And I think we see it to a greater or lesser extent. I do think it's interesting. We're starting to, in the water industry specifically, you're starting to see tools like digital twins, where you sort of set up a virtual environment where you can sort of, if I change this, what happens? You know, take real-time data, put it into the system. Okay, now what happens if I, you know, alter this variable or that variable based on real-time data? Those are sort of interesting tools, which lead, you know, I started to think, you know, leads to two sort of natural progressions. One is, how do I get more data into a system that will help me understand how to better you know, service the customer, better perform the task, or more efficiently perform the task or the job that I have to do, which leads to things like AMI and things like having those sensors out there. So that's to your point around the flushing and things like that, understanding what, you know, who's affected with a flush at this point, and how to identify them and connecting those things. But also, I think we're going to see, you know, as we get more complex data to work with, there are things like virtual sensors that start to become, you know, a tool, which means if I have enough data, now I can virtually place a sensor somewhere in the network and sort of get an idea of what's going on there based on inferences, which leads, I think, to an interesting discussion around business intelligence, machine learning, artificial intelligence, which is probably a little further down the road, especially in the water industry. But it's going to be fed by those sensors and by that edge data and things like that. So I think all these things are in my opinion, connected to that business delivery that we talked about earlier, right? Which is you know, connecting with the customer.
Hey, can I ask the panel a question? I know I've got a lot of questions because I'm new to this, as Mike Kay knows. So I'm looking at this team. You showed a slide that had all these other vendors on it, and on this call we have Aspire, who's a Cisco Value Trusted Partner, also has a lot of third-party solutions. We have John Morris with Syscon, which is a data analytics firm. And then you've got these guys from Cisco who know their stuff. So it seems to me, the nice thing is that it kind of takes a village to put together a full solution for some of the customers that might be on the line here. And I think, why us? You know, why us as opposed to one of the vendors on the other slides to help with that first meeting? So my first question is, why us? We should all be able to help answer that. And the second thing is, when we do get together with this formidable, you know, knowledge-rich team, who do we typically meet with first at an account? Who's the first set of people you talk to say, here's what we're seeing in the marketplace? So number one, why us?
So vision and agility, if I could throw that right out there really quickly. You have to have vision and you have to be agile. All of those vendors that you listed on the first page, they don't have the agility. They have a legacy system, they have a legacy market, they have a legacy way of doing business, and they're not agile in the market sector, right? You have to have vision to solve the problem. The problems that people don't even know they have yet, right? So such as We talked about blockchain and we talked about edge computing a minute ago. Well, just imagine you have a solar garden now, which is now allowed in New York State. You have community solar, which means you as a neighbor can own a percentage of a solar plant because you don't have enough real estate on your roof to put solar panels on. So you grow into this group idea around owning solar. Well, just imagine now you have an edge device and a network where you can control a battery at that solar plant, and now you as the consumer can dispatch when those electrons get removed. I want to go plug my car in at the Home Depot. I can go on my app now and let my electrons loose out of my solar powered battery, and I can choose what goes into the system and when it comes out. These are all of these types of initiatives are being driven from the top down, and people who want to get onto the wave, the tsunami that's coming, it's not a data lake, it's a data tsunami.
So I know that, John, I'm going to get you that meeting because we're going to look at some of the challenges that customers having, and you've got great knowledge when it comes to particularly this neck of the woods, the Northeast, and then Mike and Rocky, they say, by the way, what are the Cisco guys? You know, why Cisco? From a ruggedized infrastructure, hardware, and software. What do you bring to the table? And some of the things I've thought about over time, Mike, is that if you look at the way Cisco is approaching the solution, it's a integrated solution from the edge to the data center. And we do have that, but also the market, we continue to grow in the market because a lot of our customers are familiar and they have Cisco infrastructure. So it becomes somewhat of a let's take a look at how we can leverage the Cisco solutions when it comes to a problem. Am I on the right path there, guys, Rocky and Mike, being a newbie?
Yeah, I'll agree with that, and I'll say that I think when we look at the importance of somebody positioned like Cisco, you think number one of the network, which is our core competency across the board, and then you look at some of those challenges that you see, those bullet points, and every one of those there's a network element to play, right? So let's take that complex vendor mix we talked about earlier. That's going to get very complex with vendors who are going to have new and interesting solutions. They may or may not take security very seriously in the beginning. They may not be around in 3 or 4 years, right? And some of that, there's going to be some unknowns there. And so having a network that can take some of that burden of things like security and connectivity off as well is important. But in addition to that, I think that Cisco is uniquely positioned in that we are the number one networking vendor, right? The number one industrial networking vendor, and we're the number one cybersecurity vendor, right? And bring those three perspectives together really gives you peace of mind in a rapidly changing environment.
So for part of that solution where we're transporting data, you've got one throat to choke, at least. So there's one supplier there that you can work with that, people say, does Cisco work with other, what kind of accounts? We have accounts all over the world. So I want these guys at that meeting too. And then you guys really are the...
From Aspire's perspective, right, as being a classic systems integrator, we count, or we place our bet on standards. So we try not to have technology religion. Try to follow standards, look for systems that utilize standards and that interoperate. So, the YSUN 2 in the utility space, is certainly one that we pay attention to, or, other network consortiums like the LoRaWAN Alliance and things like that. So, we try not to spend too much time on a closed-end system or proprietary technologies.
So this is the village. All of you guys can help with a customer that has a challenge or help it, right? Is that teamwork here? Yeah. All you guys? All right, just checking.
I think, we have one more question from the audience. Chris, go.
Yes, how can our audience member asks, how can CyberVision help overcome these industrial network challenges?
Great question, and that's going right back to the topic of the seminar, which is asset discovery and communication mapping. I'll give that one to some of my Cisco, brethren.
Well, I'm going to. So, Mike, I know CyberVision really can see other a lot of different types of endpoints, right? It just doesn't have to be an IP type of a device.
Yeah, so where CyberVision can really help there is adding the context to the endpoints that we're used to having on the IT side. So we have these industrial devices out there that speak specialty protocols, and CyberVision understands those. It's built to understand those networks. So it can learn what's out there and put it all in the context that OT would understand, but also give IT the information they need to secure that network and make sure that they don't take it down. It's a great tool to bring both sides to the table together. So you have a common map that both people can look at. So the IT folks are going to be looking at, how it's built, communication patterns, where they could segment it, to bring it back earlier. And then the OT people are going to look at it going, okay, these devices have to communicate. These are doing certain things in terms of protection, for example. And they understand those devices in terms of the industrial side. So it really helps bridge that gap between the two teams, because they can look at, one dashboard with a bunch of tools on it that helps both sides better understand what's going on out there. And then you really get the best of both worlds, the skill sets coming together to solve that challenge and build that bigger network securely.
So if somebody's interested in that, is there a way that this team or a part of this team can do a demonstration and potential proof of value? I mean, those are some of the things that you guys bring to bear, right?
Yeah, it's not a big ask to do a proof of value with a customer. The technology can come as an appliance that can be added non-intrusively to a utilities network, and within a matter of days or a week, you can get a lot of data or a lot of insight.
So for this whole village, you could be the lead for people to reach out to and say, bring all this goodness and all this knowledge to the table for a customer, correct?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Just throwing it out there. I don't want to totally commit you, but you seem like you've got a little time on your hands, and I don't know.
Absolutely. We love it. We love it.
Any other questions out there?
I think I don't see any other questions from the audience.
And just leave a couple minutes at the end for the giveaways, for the quiz questions, okay? Right. Do your thing.
No, as we're getting to the top of the hour, I just thought I would, allow one more. If there's any other insights from the panelists before we wrap up. Again, specifically, if you want to use an example from your industry, whether it's water or power, and the importance of asset delivery. Can you tell them?
Any other thoughts, panel? Well, off camera here, I would also like to thank Matt, who not only put together all the audio visual for this first post-COVID presentation, he also turned the heat down. So it's about 25, it's like a meat locker in here. So I think if there aren't any more questions, do you want to raffle off 3 IoT water bottles?
Sure. Do you have some IoT water bottles?
I do. Yes, I do. I've got IoT water. So here's what we're going to do. Christopher, can you keep your eyes on the responses from the folks that are out there? I'm going to ask the question. The first person to chat the right answer for each question will get an IoT kit. It also includes something else. So the minute you get the box, open it up.
Before you go ahead, I'm just going to say, everyone, get the chat window up on the right-hand side. Get ready to type your response there. We don't want people to be stumbling off the finish line or the start line.
Thank you. And so, and when you get the box, make sure you open it, because there's a water bottle, and then the other thing needs water and food. Just be aware. So here's the first quiz question.
It's a dog.
What kind of car bumper is in the Aspire Center of Excellence? What kind of car bumper is in the Aspire Center of Excellence? It was mentioned earlier. Does anybody remember? You have to be in it to win it. Hey, Christopher, let me know if we're getting any answers on that one.
We have one answer.
Are we going to accept a red car bumper?
That's right. No.
We got one answer,
guys,
Paul.
You already got the bottles. What was the answer?
88 Monte Carlo.
Ching.
Okay, so you send your contact information to Christopher, and then he'll send it to me. We'll get to the bottom. Very good. The second question is, which company is John Morris from? I mean, this should be like, honestly, unless you've been drinking early today, this should be a pretty good one. Christopher, do we have an answer out there?
We are waiting for an answer. All right, we have an answer. Syscon-IoT.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Now, for the third question, this should be easy too. The first person in the chat room that spells Mike K's last name correctly gets an IoT gift. Do we have a winner?
Drum roll.
It's
it's right on
that.
the screen.
I'll give people
It
time
takes
to
a
work.
long while to type that. You got to look for all those letters.
You got to debug after putting in all that code, Mike. It takes a minute.
If you want to ask the easy question, you should have went with Smith.
Well, that's no fun. Next time, maybe.
Let's do it.
For some
do we have
reason,
a
my
winner?
compiler failed on that one, Mike. I'm trying. Hold on.
No,
Was
we're
anybody
waiting.
able to do that, Christopher?
We're waiting for. We're waiting.
Okay.
And while we're
All right,
here,
we
back,
do-
get on the
we
camera.
do-
Say
we
hello
do
to
have-
everybody.
We do have a right answer. KOP.
All right.
Ew.
CZYNSKI.
Good. So you spell checked it. So we're good. So this is Matt. He's one of the interns here. Done a heck of a job setting this up and freezing the heck out of me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Matt helped build a lot of the devices that you see back there.
Yeah.
So.
and
Thanks a lot. Yeah, so again, just to wrap it up, what we've been talking about is industrial networks and about the value of using technology to map those assets and map those communication paths. You know, given the fact that you've got legacy networks and legacy protocols out there, as well as the advent of new technologies, which tend to be more and more based on the IP or internet protocol that many of us know and love for lots of different reasons. And how this is the first step to really securing the network is knowing what you've got and how these different systems and subsystems interoperate or potentially should not interoperate. So you can use technologies to segment the network or look for abnormalities or potential threats or violations in your policy to preserve those critical functions as you go forward and as technology is driving more and more change in our world.
And so the customers that are on the line in this extended family that's on the line, let's keep the water drinkable, let's keep the toilets flushing, right? And let's keep the power on and find ways to do it better, faster, and quicker and smarter, right?
Yes.
All right. I'm exhausted. I don't know about you guys. Do we have another one after this? Or is that?
Yeah, I got one more slide.
I mean, a session.
Close
Are we
my-
done for the day? Can punch out. I think you're good.
Yeah.
I think you're good, yeah. If you go right into the PowerPoint, click here.
Yeah.
So I used to do a collaboration, but
There we
it's
go.
only here. So wow.
Thank you. Yeah, and a few too many chat windows open. Again, so if you would like any more information or to follow up with any of the panelists, here are their email addresses, or you can certainly respond to someone on the invite and we'll get you contact information as well. And just the last thing, I wanted to remind you all that we have 2 more seminars coming up that deal on 2 additional aspects of the industrial network. The next one, April 26th, is going to focus specifically on cybersecurity techniques and technologies and how they affect and benefit the industrial network. And then we're going to wrap it up with a focus on data, how data in the industrial Internet of Things, data center, what are the unique challenges and opportunities presented by that. So stay tuned, look for additional invitations from us.
And don't take summer PTO on the 28th. You want to be on that webinar.
Absolutely.
You never know what we're going to give
Or
away.
even if you are on vacation, join us
anyway.
from wherever you are. We'd like to see pictures. So again, thanks for spending the time with us.
Thank you.
And have a nice long, Easter weekend.
Right. It's Friday Eve, so go out and enjoy. Thanks, everybody.
So.
Yeah.